Okay, wow, this one's been a while in the making. A few of you have asked for some longer episodes, so you're going to get your wish here. I also feel like I should warn you, I'm not feeling good about how some of this episode sounds. I spent a lot of time editing this, but apologies up front if it starts dragging. I spent the weekend with a dear friend in Raleigh, North Carolina. I think it's safe to say we both needed it. The intent of the weekend was to see a hockey game. The Pens were playing Carolina in Raleigh. He'd scored some really nice seats for the game, too. He's not a hockey fan per se, but he was as excited as I was. We met up at a place called the Longleaf Hotel and Lounge in Raleigh. I'll put a link in the description. At first glance, it's safe to say I had reservations. I checked out the website and figured it'd be worth the adventure. There's something about the phrase mid century gem that piqued my interest. That one can really go either way. I had images of the Braidwood Inn in my head for just the hottest of seconds. Honestly, though, the place is like a time capsule, updated in all the best possible ways. Things were clean and up to date, but you could feel the retro everywhere. Honestly, it was perfect. We got settled in, we headed to the lounge for a drink. The bar was crowded, and there were less than 20 people there, so I mean, it's small. There's no food, just drinks. We talked for a bit, and then we ventured towards the arena for the game. I got to tell you, walking to our seats, seeing the ice for the first time, that smell and the feel in the air, that crispness of being in a room with a floor that's covered in ice, all the hockey noises, man, I needed all of that. There's going to be an episode of this in the near future where I get ready to play hockey again. I miss it. I haven't stopped thinking about it since Saturday. I lived in the Raleigh area for a while back in the mid 90s. I've always dug the area. Our hotel wasn't too far from some of the places I used to hang out down there. Everything's changed a lot since I've lived there, obviously. I'd see one familiar thing surrounded by a bunch of entirely new stuff. That whole part of North Carolina has always fascinated me. When I lived there, I bounced between DC, Central Virginia, and Raleigh quite a bit. Making that trips as many times as I did, I started to form backstories for all the little different parts of the area. The small towns that really didn't want to grow up. It's a really slow drive to Raleigh if you're coming from the north or the south. The main road in is US 1, which is just stoplight after stoplight. There's some fascinating little towns in that area. There's this town called Kittrell, which has always just been this massive speed trap. The speed limit doesn't go all the way down to 25 miles an hour now like it used to, but the convenience store where all the cops parked ready to dole out tickets is still standing there. Just past Kittrell is Franklinton. On one side of the road in Franklinton is one of those sketchy ass doors on the outside strip motels that are all up and down roads like Route 1. And almost directly across the street from that lies the Magic Touch Massage Parlor. And no, I did not take this picture. It was on Instagram. It looks like this building was built back in the 50s or 60s as a place for road weary travelers to relax and then just never really needed to update its business models. It's one of those places you probably think nothing of. It's always fascinated me. First, that such a business exists, but also that it's had such longevity. I mean, that's impressive. Think about it. That's some real brand loyalty there. Except for new ownership, that little stretch of US 1 has not changed one bit since I first moved down there. You pass through a few other small towns before you get to Wake Forest. Wake Forest, the town, not the school. And from there, it's just a short drive to Raleigh. At some point, Route 1 becomes Capitol Boulevard. Parts of the road have changed, but it's all still familiar to me. The mini golf where we race go karts, the bowling alley where two guys got shot right after, like 15 minutes after we left one evening, and North Hills Mall where I saw the single greatest real time hacking exploit ever one evening. All those things are still sort of there. That hacking story is one of my favorites. I've probably over romanticized parts of this over the years, but the facts are accurate. I used to read 2600 magazine. I'll put a link in the description. I read it pretty religiously. It used to be called the Hacker Quarterly, and it was full of obscure hacks, how to build different electronic devices to bypass things like phone services, exploits of all different sizes and shapes, code snippets, ads for some shady ass information, and there was always a listing of meetups. The meetup in Raleigh was outside the Ruby Tuesday over by the payphones. All 2,600 meetings are by payphones. I'm pretty sure it was at North Hills Mall, but it might have been Crabtree Valley Mall. But that's irrelevant. Don't ruin my story. So we did our meetup, talked about some stuff for like an hour. Then about 6 of us decided to go to Ruby Tuesday for dinner. The manager of the Ruby Tuesday wasn't having it that evening. He made a comment about not having time for you guys, and he knew what we were up to. Okay, look, I'll admit we look like a bunch of misfits, and not like cool misfits either. I was going through a phase where my hair was real long, and I had so much gel in it that by 7 o'clock I looked like Gilda Radner doing Rosanna Dana. And yeah, I'm old, but whatever his reason, that manager told us it was going to be a 30-minute wait. We all saw the open tables. Most of us just figured whatever and walked over by the payphones to wait for our name to be called. Except one guy. I never got his name. And no, it wasn't Neo either. He was mysterious, but again, not in a cool way at all. And it was not me at all. He kind of stared uncomfortably into the restaurant for a second, then walked over to the payphones, seemed to punch a bunch of buttons, and then joined the rest of us. Almost instantly, the payphone next to where he'd been standing started to ring. And it just kept ringing too, like to the point where a shopper answered it. Finally, the shopper is like, kind of loudly, "No, this is outside the Ruby Tuesdays." Then she went inside the restaurant to get the manager. He picks up the phone, stammers for a second, then ends up taking someone's order, hung up the phone. A couple minutes later, the phone rings again, and yet another phone in order for the restaurant. Since they were in the mall, they got a lot of call in orders from other people working in the mall. By the way, I don't want to get any trouble from the Ruby Tuesday people. It wasn't me. I promise you. I just wanted to go to the salad bar. But eventually our table was called, and as we were seated, the guy who had used the payphones pulled a mobile phone out of his pocket. It was one of those big tennis shoe size deals. He dialed something, hung up, and then just acted like everything was normal. A bunch of us thought it was weird how the phone behind the bars started ringing again right after he did all this. The mystery dialer left early after eating that evening, and there were like 4 of us remaining who kind of wondered aloud if he had anything to do with all of that. We assumed he forwarded the restaurant phone to the payphone out of spite. He was visibly put off that we weren't seated more quickly. He didn't speak much in general, but he had a cell phone and something called a pocket dialer. I'll put some links in the description if you're curious about pocket dialers and how you could use them to manipulate payphones and what a payphone was. I promise I'm going to do a super deep dive on those hacking days, such as they were, at some point. I'll also put links in the description for publicly available content about how Radio Shack phone dialers could be modified and what red boxes and blue boxes and green boxes were, and redirectors. They're all obscure now, that's what they are, but they're a part of the story I'm telling. If you're into security stuff, they're like flipper zeros built by cavemen. Anyway, back to the original story. See, that's why I script these out, to keep me on focus. It was pretty cool and surreal at the same time, taking in all of Raleigh like that. Seeing the new and the familiar side by side was pretty striking. I mean, my friend and I were kind of like that. We were close as kids, but we lost touch as teenagers. Then we reconnected over friggin' social media of all things. Ever since my surgery, I've made comments that I believe people are in our lives for a reason. I sometimes think things happen that seemingly defy practical explanation. Sometimes these things let us know that we're not in it alone. It's not always obvious at the time, but I know I needed everything that happened to me to happen, and I needed everyone in my life to help me get through it. This goes beyond any belief structure or logical explanation for me. Sometimes things just work out perfectly. You reconnect with an old friend, you go back to an old hangout, you reignite an old interest or hobby, you hear just the right song at just the right moment. That's what happened to me last week. And it's happened another time since then, right when I needed it. So I started writing this next bit in the parking lot at work one morning. I had this bright idea that I would just do one of these live, and it's not going to work out. As I drove in that morning, I started thinking about how I was going to do this episode. At the time, it had been way too long since I'd done one. It was probably like 2 weeks or something, but it felt like it was forever. I was really missing the way I feel when I do these that morning. I call this feeling being at sea level. Look, in the morning, there's always going to be something that drags you down on any given day. If I can start my day where I was that morning, unencumbered, man, that's the dream. And the badass part is, it's been working out for me lately. The past couple of weeks, the end of last year was rough though, and weird. Like weird to the point I felt like I was either slipping into depression or I was losing my mind again. I was thinking about how I talk about this mental funk that I've been in, and the title Lonesome, Ornery, and kind of chilly actually came to me. Lonesome because I'd been away from people and I found that I need that interaction. Ornery because that's been a misperception about me and the character I used to play on social media a lot of times. And kind of chilly actually because it was a suck ass weather day that morning. But I was feeling amazing. Like most people, music's always been pretty important to me. Not just one kind of music. I pretty much ticked all the boxes for people that grew up in my generation: punk, metal, country, rock, grunge, pop, rap, hip hop, funk. I even went through a Kiss phase. I mean, you name it, I've been a fan of it. I'm not saying I'm unique, I'm just providing some backstory. I've always liked Waylon Jennings. I don't know what it is exactly. I guess it's that cliched outlaw country bit, but not really. It's always fascinated me how Buddy Holly's bass player ended up as the Waylon Jennings that I knew. Besides his music, I pretty much think everything his son Shooter does is brilliant. I should probably just do this whole deep dive on music in general right now, I guess. So here we go. My friends who listened to heavy metal never really hung out with my country music friends. My punk rock friends were just a bunch of nerds that never hung out with anyone. So each different type of music became like the soundtrack to a different part of my life. I started listening to bands like Dead Kennedys and Minutemen and The Clash, while a small group of us sat in some dude's living room trying to break copy protected games for the Apple II platform, amongst other creative endeavors. When I'm doing something that highly captivates me and just the right song comes on, man, nothing compares to that. Hacking is insanely boring most of the time. In my experience, there's some amount of argument and a general insulting of skills, brief moments of excitement, and then hours of poring over deeply technical stuff, all while listening to some guy's punk albums. It got to the point where that aggressive music kind of fueled my creative side. I don't have any other outlet other than technology. I don't know how else to put it. So when I hear that music, it just kind of snaps me back to that feeling I had when I was a kid, when I was learning it all, when I was picking it all up. I feel more engaged mentally and ready to solve problems. All right, tying this all together now. Pay attention. I think I got this. So as I was driving into work that morning, like I said, it was just a crap day. I mean, god awful, cold, gross, rainy. And in my head, I'm just trying to get to sea level. I'm sitting there thinking, lonesome, ornery, and kind of chilly, actually. That'd be funny to talk about. And like the universe does, 10 seconds later, it was the next song on my radio. And right away, I was like, all right, universe, god damn it, I get it. Look, I don't think there was any divine intervention in this, but it gave me that feeling that, okay, things are going to start to make sense now. And they did. I got out of my head, and it was a great day from there. Look, maybe subconsciously I heard the DJ say the song title. I don't remember what happened leading up to it, but 10 seconds after I thought of that, boom, there it was right when I needed it. It was awesome. It was just like exactly what I needed right then. I wanted to capture that in the moment by recording this live, but like I said, that didn't work out. I did that last bit in speech to text, and yeah, that's why this whole episode took so damn long. I said earlier that I believe things happen for a reason. So I'm in Raleigh, and my buddy hands me this little gift he's gotten me. It's silly, he said. I think it's pretty friggin' perfect. It's nothing and it's everything at the same time. This guy knows me like few others do. He knows that there's a replica of the sticker on his guitar on all of my laptops, and he knows why. All right, guys, I think I did it. I think I tied it all up. Damn it, I said guys, but I'm going to give myself a pass on that one. Talked about the music, the time in Raleigh, friendships, hockey, hacking. Yeah, I covered it all. I'm pretty proud of myself on that, honestly. By the way, I have no idea what became of the mystery caller. I went to another 2600 meetup and he wasn't there. And like I said, it wasn't me. I promise you. Take care.